of the history and the economic activity of the communities that they serve. The mayors in my region who regret the way that the federal government has gone about this secretively are worried that they don't have enough details in order to prepare themselves adequately. How are the municipalities going to cover these expenses if even the federal government says that it no longer has the resources to do so? The looming specter of privatization or the simple abandonment of these harbour authorities is also present. The mayors are asking for something simple. The government must remediate these ports and offer the communities the financial support necessary so that they can buy them instead of trying to stick them with the bill for infrastructure that has been neglected by the federal government.
The honourable member for Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this week is Railway Safety Week. Every year in Canada, approximately 300 collisions occur at railway crossings. Virtually all of these could be avoided. The goal of Railway Safety Week is to give awareness to Canadians in order to prevent collisions between trains and motor vehicles. Railway safety is of the utmost importance to me, and making sure that our families and our communities remain safe is something that I passionately advocate for. In fact, my own private member's bill, Bill C-627, an act to amend the Railway Safety Act, which has recently passed the committee stage, seeks to give additional powers to the Minister of Transport and railway safety inspectors so they may intervene when required in order to better ensure the safety of citizens, property, and communities. Mr. Speaker, I am confident this bill will make a positive change, and I encourage all Canadians to become involved and promote rail safety. One injury or fatality is one too many. Thank you.
The honourable member for York South Weston.
Mr. Speaker, people in my riding of York South Weston are still concerned about rail safety. Since the tragedy at Lac-Mégantic in 2013, little has changed while the volume of crude explosive oil has transported through Weston, Mount Dennis and the Junction neighbourhoods has continued to grow. The Auditor General and the Transportation Safety Board have both scolded Transport Canada for its lack of attention to rail safety while this government cuts its budget. This winter's oil train wrecks in Northern Ontario add to the growing list of wrecks all over North America. The resulting fireballs are from the newer, supposedly safer 1232 tankers. They were traveling at speeds much lower than the minister's new limit, and they still burst into flames. The attitude of this government that we should just pray that train wrecks don't happen in a populated area is not calming the fears of the residents of York South Weston or anywhere. A Toronto group of hard-working volunteers called Safe Rail Communities has taken up the cause and will be testifying before the Transportation Committee this afternoon. Let's hope the government is listening.
The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Friday, I was honoured to welcome the Minister of Veterans Affairs to my beautiful riding of Kelowna Lake Country. As Rotarians, the Minister and I started our day off at the Kelowna Sunrise Rotary Club, one of the many clubs across Canada that partner with government to make life better for people locally and globally. One of those steadfast partners is the Canadian government, which has been and remains a global leader with Rotary International and the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Mr. Speaker, April 24th to 30th is World Immunization Week, and Rotary International is calling on all countries to close the immunization gap. It takes less than $1 to vaccinate a child against polio. Although the world is 99% of the way there, 1 in 5 children still misses out. In 2013, an estimated 21.8 million infants did not receive life-saving vaccines. Mr. Speaker, we have a narrow window of opportunity to close the gap. I encourage all members in the House and everyone to support their local Rotary clubs and Rotary International and help reach the goal to end polio now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Saint Laurent-Cartierville.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to commemorate a life of service. Christine Stewart passed away last Saturday. She dedicated her life to her family and to social service as a nurse, school board trustee, tireless volunteer involved in charities, art bodies, international development, co-founder of NGOs whose names are, as such, reflection of her whole life. Horizons of Friendship and Northumberland Fair Share Food Bank. She invested her passion as a Liberal MP for the riding of Northumberland, which she proudly represented from 1988 to 2000. As Secretary of State, she improved Canadian involvement in Latin America and Africa. As Minister of the Environment, Christine Stewart negotiated and signed the Kyoto Protocol improve the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, the Species at Risk Act, and the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act. After leaving politics, Christine never stopped her life of service. Elle nous manquera. She will be
deeply missed.
The honourable member for Dauphin, Swan River, Marquette.
Mr. Speaker, our Conservative government believes that parents know what's best for their children. That's why we're increasing the child care expense deduction to $8,000, increasing the universal child care benefit to $1,920 annually for children under age 6, and expanding it to $720 annually for children aged 6 to 17.
Outstanding.
But, Mr. Speaker, policy is much more than numbers on paper. The right policy has an important human dimension, as I learned from one of my constituents. Ms. Mackenzie Daynard from Swan River, Manitoba, wrote me a letter to say, quote, "This helps a lot for single parents. Thank you for helping us raise our children."
Oh, wow.
Mr. Speaker, our government is delivering support directly to families like Mackenzie's. The Liberals and New Democrats want to take that money away from Mackenzie and families like hers. And that, Mr. Speaker, is shameful.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Today is the day of Air Force Appreciation Day, and I care particularly about this day because of the presence of CFB Bagotville in my riding. I can see every day the immense contribution made by Air Force members and their families to our communities. During my mandate, I've been able to forge strong ties with senior members of the forces, with officers in Bagotville, members of the forces, and civilian personnel who work there. I'd like to thank the commander of the Royal Canadian Air Force, Lieutenant General Yvan Blondin. He has done remarkable work everywhere that he has held a position and has played a crucial role in bringing forth the problem of mental health care within the forces. I'd also like to thank Colonels Paul Prévost, Sylvain Menard, and Éric Simoneau because of everything they have done to support the members of the forces who go through difficult times as well as their families. And there are too many officers and members of the Air Forces in Bagotville for me to be able to thank them individual. But please know that I'm proud of your work and proud to represent you in Ottawa.
Member for Chilliwack, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, today is Air Force Appreciation Day on Parliament Hill, and I'm pleased to honour my constituent, retired Chief Warrant Officer Reginald Dawes. Reg joined the Royal Canadian Air Force in 1955 and served with distinction during his 36-year career in postings across Canada, including at the Canadian Forces School of Military Engineering in Chilliwack. He's been a member of the RCAF Association for over 20 years. Reg never misses a ceremony at our local cenotaph, and he has been instrumental in preserving the memory of the fallen, particularly with our youth. For his leadership abilities, people skills, and dedication, he received the Distinguished Service Award in 2013. Today, Reg will be honoured with the Len Baldwick Memorial Award, which recognizes skill, enthusiasm, inspiration, direction, and leadership in association activities above the ordinary. I invite all members to join with me to congratulate Reginald Dawes and salute all Canadian Air Force personnel, past and present, for their outstanding service to Canada.
The honourable member for Red Deer.
Mr. Speaker, my constituents of Red Deer know that it is only our Conservative government that will lower taxes for the middle class. Middle class families in my riding are looking forward to receiving the benefits from the family tax cut and the enhanced universal child care benefit. These benefits will leave 100% of families with kids with more money in their pockets. The Liberals and the NDP will take this away and raise taxes on middle class families. Raise taxes on middle-class seniors, and raise taxes on middle-class consumers. That's their plan for the middle class. Our government's plan is for reducing taxes for the middle class. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
Mr. Speaker, today in Hamilton and in communities across Canada, workers are marking the National Day of Mourning for workers injured and killed on the job and those who have become ill because of their workplace. The National Day of Mourning is not only a time of reflection and remembrance, it is also a day to rededicate ourselves to the goal of keeping workers safe on their jobs. Every day, 4 workers die on the job, and each year another 1 million are injured. Such statistics are clearly unacceptable, but equally staggering is the fact that 1 in 7 young workers is injured on the job. These are our sons, daughters, brothers, and sisters.
Canadian workers lose their lives because workplace safety is thrown out the window in the interest of the bottom line. When a worker is killed, it is far too often because they've been pressured into doing unsafe work. I would close, Mr. Speaker, with one of the Labour movement's most important mottos: an injury to one is an injury to all.
The honourable member for Fleetwood Fort
Mr. Speaker, residents of my riding and across all of British Columbia are concerned about the crime epidemic in Surrey. That is why our Conservative government has taken strong action to increase frontline RCMP officers in our communities. We have passed more than 30 new measures to combat crime, and we have made the Youth Gang Prevention Fund a permanent program. Unfortunately, the Liberals and NDP have opposed and obstructed us every step of the way. The Liberal solution to drug-fueled gang warfare is to make marijuana easier for all children to buy and smoke. Mr. Speaker, British Columbians know that it is only this Prime Minister and this Conservative government who can be trusted to protect them from violent crime.
The honourable member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
I rise in solidarity with working Canadians who gather in places like Kapuskasing, Elliott Lake, and HoC First Nation because no one deserves to die at work, which is what happens to 4 people on average in this country every single day. Workers die from traumatic injuries sustained on the job, occupational diseases, and even violence in the workplace. That doesn't include individuals who die from work-related conditions and diseases that go unreported. While the number of workplace-related deaths has grown in Canada, other OECD countries have seen theirs go down. Canada has laws for criminal responsibility in some cases of occupational death, but they are so rarely applied, there is no incentive for employers to address dangerous working conditions. We are trading the safety of our workplace for profits. But for families who have lost loved ones, there is no amount that can provide comfort. While so many needlessly lose their lives year after year, we have to ask ourselves, how many men, women, and teenagers have to die before governments finally take action?
The honourable member for Elmwood, Transcona.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Finance Minister tabled a balanced budget in this House. Now that we've balanced our budget, we're helping hardworking Canadian families balance theirs through our new family tax cut and enhanced universal child care benefit. These measures will benefit 100% of families with children, leaving every family with more money in their pocket to spend on their priorities. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals and the NDP have a different plan, and it's a simple plan. They want higher taxes on middle-class families, higher taxes on middle-class seniors, and higher taxes on middle-class consumers, so they can afford their plans to expand their control on the finances of Canadian families. They philosophically believe that government is better suited to handle the finances of Canadian families than the hard-working people of Canada. Mr. Speaker, that's the wrong plan for hard-working Canadian families. That's why our Conservative government is reducing taxes on the middle class.
The honourable member for Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, our government's top priority is creating jobs, growth, and long-term prosperity. Mr. Speaker, our plan is working. Since the depths of the global economic downturn, over 1.2 million net new jobs have been created, overwhelmingly full-time, well-paying, and in the private sector. Indeed, Canada has had one of the best job creation records in the G7 over the recovery. Economic Action Plan 2015 builds on the government's plan for jobs and growth by supporting the manufacturing sector, helping small business and entrepreneurs, training a highly skilled workforce, investing in infrastructure, growing trade and expanding markets. And the list goes on, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in Richmond Hill, and indeed all Canadians, know that our government is the only one they can trust to cut taxes and put money back in their pockets. They cannot afford the Liberal NDP plan that would raise taxes on middle-class families, on middle-class seniors, on middle-class consumers, and on small businesses.
Thank you. Honourable member for Cape Breton, Cancel.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the entire Liberal caucus, I wish to extend my deepest sympathies to all families who who have been affected by death or injury in the workplace. Their sacrifice and that of all their families must serve as a lesson to us all. Day of Mourning is held on April 28th every year to remember those who have suffered and died on the job and to renew our efforts for safe workplaces. Today, there's pronounced sadness and at the same time, frustration. Frustration that needless injuries and deaths can continue to occur as a result of not enacting the right law or not doing a good enough job enforcing the laws that exist. The April 28th monuments are often inscribed with the words, "Fight for the living, mourn for the dead." Today is the day we honor the dead, but also a day to remind us, as parliamentarians, we have a never-ending obligation to make workplaces safer by enacting and enforcing laws that prevent workplace injury, illness, and death.
The honourable member for Rosemont-Petite. Mr. Speaker, today we celebrate the National Day of Mourning. According to statistics, today, 3 people will go to work, fathers, mothers, and teenagers, and will never return home. In 2013, there were 902 workplace deaths reported in Canada. Thousands of others had accidents on the job, and others have disease. These break families, and that is why we are commemorating these workers, and we are reiterating our pledge to protect the living. The NDP is determined to do everything in its power to improve workplace safety and reduce the number of accidents. Today, on this National Day of Mourning, we promise to work to ensure that all workers have safe working conditions. Lest we forget, Mr. Speaker, no one should have to lose their lives when going to work.
The honourable member for Cumberland, Colchester, Muscatine
Mr.
Valley.
Speaker. I rise in this House today to mark the National Day of Mourning and pay tribute to those who have been killed, injured, or suffered illness as a result of work-related incidents. One of the best ways we can recognize those who have been affected by these incidents is to do everything in our power to protect Canadians from workplace hazards and prevent further accidents, illnesses, and deaths. Although there's been a decrease in fatalities from the previous year, one fatality, Mr. Speaker, is one too many. Our government works with our partners and stakeholders to educate employees about their health and safety rights, responsibilities, and preventative measures. We develop and share tools and best practices with employers and workers to help them make informed decisions on how best to ensure workplace safety. All Canadians deserve to return home safe and sound every day, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence to commemorate the National Day of Mourning and to honour the memory of workers killed or injured at work.
I now invite honourable members to rise.
Thank you, colleagues. Oral questions, questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, what the Auditor General has confirmed today is that the Conservatives are very bad managers. In fact, the Minister of Finance simply does not assess or evaluate the tax measures they put in place. These are electoral goodies, no more, no less. No analysis of the costs or the results. And the Minister of Finance said this week that he does not even know if this will create jobs. Why does the Prime Minister insist on making gifts to the wealthy when the Auditor General clearly demonstrates once again that they don't know what they're doing? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. That's not what the Auditor General said. He said that we've concluded that Finance Canada has to do more analysis of the tax measures and increase oversight.
Additional 2 years of data in addition to the 2 years we already published to be published. That's a recommendation we will accept. Mr. Speaker, what we don't accept is the premise of the NDP, that somehow giving people more of their own money is taking something away from Canadians. This is people's own money. We want to make sure more of it stays in their pockets and creates jobs and economic growth.
Problem is 85% of Canadians don't benefit from it. He's taking from the poor to give to the rich. The Auditor General just slammed the Conservatives for failing to be transparent with Canadians about billions of dollars in tax giveaways. Conservatives have introduced dozens of loopholes and boutique tax credits that help the wealthiest few. But they refuse to give even basic information about precisely who benefits and how much the giveaways cost. Does the Prime Minister really think he can hide the cost of his gifts to the wealthy few? Who does he think he is, Paul Martin?
Obviously not, Mr. Speaker. If I was Paul Martin, the NDP would be supporting me. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General actually said we found that Finance Canada does a good job of analyzing new tax measures and monitoring existing ones. He's asked for an additional 2 years of data in addition to the 2 years we already published, and of course Finance Canada has accepted that recommendation. Mr. Speaker, what we won't accept is the NDP wanting to take away tax-free savings accounts, wanting to take away universal child care benefits. These are for all Canadian families.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Put up the same program as him. The only problem is, after 150 years of Conservative and Liberal incompetence, Canadians deserve real change. Last time we were in the House, the Prime Minister claimed that before he appointed Mike Duffy to the Senate, Duffy signed a declaration swearing that he was a resident of PEI. Only problem is there's nothing in that declaration about that, Mr. Speaker. So here's the problem. The Prime Minister says Duffy signed it before being named. It's not true. So can the Prime Minister please tell Canadians which declaration he was referring us to and when exactly did Mike Duffy sign it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Just to reply to that earlier comment by the Leader of the NDP, when it comes to what we've done to give 11 million Canadians tax-free savings accounts, to increase the guaranteed income supplement, to create the universal child care benefit, to allow income splitting for seniors and for families, to give a 2% tax cut to the GST, Mr. Speaker. I know that the NDP wants to take those things away, but that is not the kind of change that Canadians are looking for.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mike who? Mike Duffy. Mike Duffy isn't the only long-time Ottawa resident that the Prime Minister appointed to represent Atlantic Canada. Carolyn Stewart-Olsen not only lived in Ottawa, she worked side by side with the Prime Minister day in, day out. His press secretary, she was his communication director, and frankly, his closest political confidant. So how is it possible that the Prime Minister thought Carolyn Stewart-Olsen actually lived in New Brunswick when she was showing up to work for him here in Ottawa every single day?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I certainly would not accept by any means the premise of that question. What I would say, Mr. Speaker, is what is very clear is that Mr. Duffy's actions are before the court. The government has been assisting the RCMP in this investigation and the Crown in its presentation of the case. That issue, those matters are before the court. We'll let the court adjudicate those matters.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Les sénateurs libéraux
Liberal and conservative senators are trying to block the internal audit report on senators' places of residence. Senators don't want Canadians to know that what they themselves have discovered about their own colleagues. They are looking out for each other, and the Prime Minister is playing along. There is a conservative majority in the Senate. Where is the internal audit report?
His conservative senators, who are his caucus colleagues, make this report public. Hear, hear!
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The opposition knows very well that this is a matter for the other place. It is not government business. This is now an issue that is before the courts in the Duffy case, and we will let the courts do their work.
Honourable Member for Papineau.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians watching the hockey playoffs are being bombarded with millions of dollars of wasteful, partisan government ads that they're paying for. As we've seen time and time again, this government has the wrong priorities. And here's another example. Why is the Prime Minister spending more than twice as much on budget ads as he is on young entrepreneurs?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was delighted to see the support of Futurepreneur Canada for the budget, and I would urge the Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party to listen to them. Mr. Speaker, the reality, of course, is the things that we are doing for Canadians, tax benefits that go to seniors and to families. These are very good for all Canadians, Mr. Speaker. We want to be sure that all Canadians benefit. I know it's the position of the Liberal Party. They're opposed to these things, and they want to take them away, but the reality is that these are benefits available to Canadians. We want to make sure Canadians benefit.
Mr. Speaker.
The Conservative government is getting ready to waste taxpayers' money once again by spending millions on advertising to vaunt its recent budget. Public funds should serve the common interest, not the interest of the Conservative Party. Can the Prime Minister explain to us why he's spending $17 million of our money on partisan ads, whereas he could have created 5,000 more jobs this summer for our young people? Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in the Economic Action Plan, there are many benefits for the middle class and for families, for seniors, for women, for the middle class of consumers, for small and medium-sized businesses. Mr. Speaker, we know very well that the Liberal Party hates benefits and tax cuts. These are available, and we are going to ensure that the people get them.
The Honourable Member for Papineau.
Mr. Speaker, these are the answers of an out-of-touch, decade-old government. Right. It's hard to imagine the Prime Minister supporting these measures back in 2006. He's changed. Why is he spending $17 million on budget ads this year? Why not invest that into the Canada Summer Jobs Program and put 5,000 young people to work this summer like they want to do?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, here's a party, the Liberal Party, that has opposed tax-free savings accounts for ordinary Canadians, a party, the Liberal Party, which has opposed the increase in the guaranteed income supplement for Canadians, a party which has opposed the universal child care benefit, income splitting for seniors and for families, and other tax credits for Canadian families, Mr. Speaker. We know who is out of touch, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we're helping family, helping seniors, helping the middle class, and they can keep voting against them all they want.
Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, with heavy hearts, we are watching the number of dead rise by the hour in Nepal. All of these people need help urgently, including our Canadians who are trapped on the ground. But we've learned that the Canadians on site are getting better consular services from the American or French governments than our own. Why is Canada not working with those countries and our other partners to coordinate assistance to Canadians who are in Nepal? Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Not the case. First of all, there has never been a Canadian embassy in Nepal. That being said, we already have eight additional staff members on ground who arrived yesterday. There are 6 more on their way. We're working with our allies, other countries, Mr. Speaker, and I can indicate to the honourable member that every single effort will be made to assist Canadians in that part of the world.
Honourable member for Hamilton East, Stoney Creek.
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course, our deepest condolences go to the people of Nepal as they deal with the devastation of this earthquake. But Canadians stranded in Nepal need help too. They want to return to Canada. They're being told that the Canadian transport plane, which will take evacuees to New Delhi, are being left at that point to find flights home on their own. Will the government provide Canadians evacuated to neighbouring countries with the further emergency consular assistance they need until they can return home?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
The C-17 Globemaster, which has already been deployed, will be available to evacuate Canadians from Kathmandu. That is the first priority. And I can tell him as well, a second C-17 will be made available in the next coming days to get Canadians again out of Nepal. That being said, Mr. Speaker, a consular service has been established at the American Club in central Kathmandu. We'll make every effort, Mr. Speaker, to assist Canadians.
Honourable member for Churchill.
Mr. Speaker, First Nations have worse health outcomes than other Canadians, yet this Conservative government has shown a total disregard for this fact. The Auditor General revealed this morning that First Nations in remote communities are being forced to seek health care from substandard clinics with under-trained staff. The government is not even trying to allocate services based on need or to make sure First Nations have the same care as other Canadians. So the question is, why does this government think it's okay to treat First Nations in a substandard way?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, that's actually not what the Auditor General said, but I do thank him for the work that he did, and I had a chance to meet with him to describe the comprehensive nature of the responses that we've made to his audit. And Mr. Speaker, it's important that Canadians know that we've actually increased funding on First Nations for health by 31%. And our number one priority, Mr. Speaker, is making sure that Aboriginal Canadians have access to healthcare providers. Nurses on First Nations are highly educated and qualified individuals, and they're a big part of the community. We are increasing our efforts so that nurses meet public service requirements, but we're also encouraging more practitioners to work in remote First Nations by giving Canada student loan forgiveness for doctors and nurses. And we've also launched a nurse recruitment and retention strategy. And I'm pleased to say we've had over 250 applications since February. Mr. Speaker, we're well on our way to addressing all of the issues the Auditor General.
The Honourable Member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
This government's record is quite simply indefensible. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General is clear. First Nations in remote communities are forced to get treatment in substandard clinics with nurses who lack training. In one community, there hasn't been a visit from a healthcare specialist in over 2 years because of a septic tank problem that was never repaired. 2 years, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't make any sense. Why are the Conservatives neglecting remote communities?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me just explain to the member how the access to healthcare providers on remote First Nations worked. First of all, we have over 734 Aboriginal health facilities on First Nations. We're investing over $30 million towards the maintenance of these facilities, and we're constantly working with First Nations to make sure that they are maintained. And in fact, we're building 5 brand new facilities in the last 3 years. But we also have telehealth available, and if, Mr. Speaker, any First Nation Aboriginal cannot get access to the health care they need, we're willing, of course, and always have the opportunity to use emergency medical evacuation at no cost to the First Nation.
Another thing we have learned in the Auditor General's report is that last year 1,500 offenders were directly released into society with no rehabilitation. Not only do they have a right to rehabilitation, and we are well aware of the beneficial effects of social reinsertion for our public safety. Will the Minister listen to the repeated recommendations of the Auditor General and the correctional investigator and make this a priority? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. I want to say that we have received the Auditor General's recommendations and we share his perspective, which means that our government has made a balance between punishment and the crime, and offenders spend their time behind bars and the public is safe. So while they are serving their sentences, they have access to rehabilitation programs, which they have increased, and almost 85% have access to that. So we keep as a priority the safety of our communities.
Mr. Speaker, today's Auditor General's report on the National Defence Ombudsman is extremely troubling. The report reveals serious mismanagement and ethical breaches within the office. According to the Auditor General, the Defence Department knew about many of these problems but failed to fully investigate. Mr. Speaker, the Ombudsman's office is a vital resource for soldiers and their families to get redress. Can the Minister of Defence explain why his department allowed this toxic work environment to exist, and will he commit to proper monitoring of the Ombudsman's office to ensure this cannot happen again?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Well, Mr. Speaker, all of these oversight bodies like Ombudsman operate in a quasi-independent fashion, but I want to thank the Auditor General for getting to the bottom of this completely unacceptable abuse of both public servants and tax dollars. We accept all of his recommendations without reservation, and specific measures are already being taken, including a new agreement to better manage employees and processes for better financial accountability, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, a new report confirms once again that fewer and fewer of the unemployed are receiving EI when they need it, while the Conservative budget is taking billions out of the EI fund, which we might remember is funded by employees and employers. And why are they doing that? To offer income splitting to the wealthiest and allowing them to shelter more money in their TFSAs. So the real question, Mr. Speaker, is why are the Conservatives using EI contributions to pad the wallets of the wealthiest rather than helping the 1.3 million Canadians who are unemployed? Honourable Minister of Employment. Mr. Speaker, those facts are incorrect in this question. Our policy, as described in the budget, is to balance the EI fund in the midterm. That is to say, there was a deficit during the recession in that fund, and now we are reimbursing that. In 2 years' time, we'll reduce the premiums, which will create jobs for employees and which will leave more money in their pockets.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians who lose their job through no fault of their own expect the EI system to help because that's what it's supposed to do. But even with so many Canadians out of work, 1.3 million at last count, access to EI benefits is at historic lows. 2/3 of unemployed Canadians are denied support. Mr. Speaker, when so many are struggling to make ends meet, how can the Conservatives justify putting handouts to the wealthy few ahead of helping those who really need it?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, the member is absolutely false. The policy laid out in the budget is for the employment insurance account to balance over the medium term. That is, it was in a deficit during the recession. That money is now being paid back. We are cutting employment insurance premiums for both employees and employers by 21% in 2017. That will create jobs by making it less expensive to hire and leave more money in the pockets of people who work. The NDP and Liberals want to spend billions on a 45-day work year where people would only work 45 days and then they would be on EI for the rest of the year. That would cost billions and kill jobs. That's why we reject it.
Honourable Member for Skeena, Berkeley Valley.
45-day work year sounds like the finance minister. You know, the Prime Minister once lectured the UN saying, and I quote, "You can't manage what you can't measure." Well, that could have actually been the title of the Auditor General's report that said the Conservatives are failing on drug safety, failing on First Nations health care, and failing even to measure the cost to taxpayers of billions of dollars in tax handouts. Now, I understand why after the bad week that the finance minister had, he's been benched. Is there anybody over there willing to take some responsibility for the mess they're making, or are they leaving that to future generations to clean up?
Mr. Speaker, let me remind the honourable member what the Auditor General said, and I quote, "We found that Finance Canada does a good job of analysing new tax measures and monitoring existing measures." Mr. Speaker, I remind the member that those tax measures are measures like pension income splitting for families, pension income splitting for seniors. Mr. Speaker, those are tax measures that are putting money back into the pockets of Canadians. We know that New Democratic Party would tax middle-class Canadians. They would tax middle-class seniors. Mr. Speaker, we aren't going to let that happen. Canadians know they're better off with this Conservative government.
Honourable member for Scarborough, Asian.
Mr. Speaker, this government has spent nearly $750 million on partisan ads, yet last week's budget included no new money to help promote tourism in Canada, to promote Canada as a tourism destination in the U.S. Instead, after years of cuts and neglect, the budget included only a vague commitment to consult with important stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, hundreds of thousands of middle-class Canadians depend on our tourism industry, and yet this government still has no plan. Can the minister tell this House how much money is set aside to promote Canada in the U.S., or does Canada's action plan only include partisan advertising?
The Honourable Minister of State for Science and Technology.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member opposite for his question. I'd like to welcome him back to the House. And I appreciate just only having just recently returned, there's a few things I'd like to bring to his attention and members opposite. Our government is extremely proud of the concrete actions it has taken to support Canada's tourism industry. In fact, he might be interested in knowing that the investments that we're making in Canadian Tourism Commission are paying off. And since last January 2014, overnight trips to Canada have increased 10.8% over last year. Where's that coming from? That's coming from the United States. And Budget 2015, Mr. Speaker, proposes additional support to the CTC to embark on a new marketing program in the United States in partnership with the tourism industry.
Honourable member for Winnipeg North.
The minister should not be proud. He should be embarrassed. Quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, we spend hundreds of millions of tax dollars in partisan advertising, totaling, Mr. Speaker, $750,000, Mr. Speaker. $billion, Mr. Speaker. This is something that the Prime Minister needs to really kind of get his head around, Mr. Speaker. That's a phenomenal amount of advertising. Let me ask the Prime Minister, how much advertising has been done to advertise the fact that the Conservative government has increased the age of retirement from 65 to 67, Mr. Speaker? That's going to affect millions of Canadians.
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, after the Liberal ad scam, that party has no credibility talking about government. We are advertising the family tax cut, which will save up to $2,000 through income splitting. We're advertising the Prime Minister's increased universal child care benefit, which pays almost $2,000 for kids under 6 and $720 for kids 6 through 17. Here's the difference. They used government advertising to give money to themselves. We use government advertising to give money back to Canadian taxpayers.
The Honourable Member for Kings Hants.
Speaker, the Bank of Canada says housing prices are overvalued by up to 30%. The bank cites elevated risks of a housing correction in Alberta, Toronto, and Vancouver, and warns that if that happened in these markets simultaneously, quote, the spillover effects to the rest of the economy could be significant. These are serious risks facing our economy and housing markets. That's why the government was advised to increase the contingency reserve. Why did the Conservatives actually ignore that advice and raid the reserve? Was it just to cobble up an illusory surplus on the eve of an election?
The Honourable Minister of State for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, in recent years, the government has taken action to ensure long-term stability of the housing market and to reduce taxpayers' exposure. These actions have helped ensure that Canada's housing market remains relatively strong. We will continue to monitor the housing market closely. Mr. Speaker, our government is lowering taxes for taxpayers. We're providing benefits directly to families and protecting and creating jobs to families to make sure that they meet the ends meet. Mr. Speaker, we're doing all we can to keep money in the pockets of Canadians. We know that party would take that away from Canadians.
The honourable member for Brossard-La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, there's a worrisome complacency at Transport Canada when it comes to safety. Another TSB investigation report released yesterday is categorical. The current method of oversight almost completely neglects regulatory compliance assessment, and if Transport Canada fails to take an approach that combines reviews and audits, the risk of accidents increases. But the government has cut budgets for transportation safety by 20%. When are they going to take Canadian safety seriously? The Honourable Minister of Transport.
First of all, we want to thank the Transportation Safety Board for the report in which they found, Mr. Speaker, that the airline, Buffalo Airways, was found to not be following the rules, and we find this to be absolutely unacceptable. Safety management systems are internationally known as the gold standard, and that's what we employ here in Canada. In fact, in 2012, Transport Canada developed a civil aviation action plan to ensure that oversight was as robust as needed for their mandate. We will continue to monitor the implementation of these changes that Transport Canada is bringing about, and we will not hesitate to use every tool that we have in order to ensure that Transport Canada is carrying out their mandate.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, this is another troubling TSB report on the government's failure on air safety. The report is clear. The current approach to oversight is at risk of failing to address unsafe practices and conditions. If Transport Canada does not adopt a balanced approach that combines inspection with audits, the risk of accident may increase. When will the minister stop cutting transport safety and start ensuring Canadians' safety?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I previously mentioned in the answer before, the department created in 2002 a civil aviation action plan in order to respond to the critique of the Auditor General's report in that spring. We are monitoring the carrying out of this implementation of this action plan. There's also parliamentary committee oversight, and as I stated already, Mr. Speaker, that we will use every tool we have to ensure that Transport Canada is fulfilling its mandate of oversight in civil aviation.
Honourable Member for Hamilton Mountain.
The man the Prime Minister chose as his parliamentary secretary, his spokesperson on ethics, is now facing possible jail time after violating the Elections Act. Yet at every step, despite all the accusations, the charges, the investigation, the Prime Minister staunchly defended him. So why did the Prime Minister insist on Del Maestro's innocence? Or was this just the standard Conservative practice of denying everything?
I think we may have strayed away from government business on this particular question. L'honorable député de Rosemont.
The honourable member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, governing properly starts by abiding by the law. That's why the question was relevant. Electoral fraud is a head-on attack on democracy. It strips Canadians of their right to choose a government. This fraud comes very close to the Prime Minister. His former parliamentary secretary is now facing a stiff sentence after the in-and-out scandal, the robocalls, election overspending in Labrador. Their cup runneth over. Are the Conservatives now going to clean up their act and abide by the Elections Act?
The honourable member for Wetaskiwin.
Mr. Speaker, we know Canadians cannot afford the reckless plans of the NDP and the Liberals. We know the NDP and Liberals would hike taxes on middle-class families, middle-class consumers, and middle-class businesses. Whether they want to purchase a new home or car, start a new business, or save for their retirement, Canadians have many reasons to save at every stage of life. Can the Minister of State for Finance tell this House what the Conservative government is doing to help Canadians save for their own priorities?
State for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the member for Wetaskiwin for that question. That is why our Conservative government introduced the tax-free savings account. Nearly 11 million Canadians have opened a tax-free savings account. 60% of those who have maximized their tax-free savings account earn under $60,000 a year. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2015 provide Canadians with greater opportunity to save on a tax-free basis. We know that the Liberals and the New Democrats would take that away and raise taxes. Mr. Speaker, we will not let that happen.
Member for Abitibi-Temiskaming. It's become a habit for the Conservatives. They make promises but fail to follow through on them. For thalidomide victims, it's not right to create false hope. But the House unanimously approved an NDP motion to provide financial compensation, but not a word in the budget. Health Canada has not released its assistance plan. They haven't given the victims any details either. When is the minister going to treat those victims with dignity? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are working closely with TVAC, the organization. And Mr. Speaker, it was always our understanding that after we announced the historic assistance to cover the survivors' needs, that we would be working with the organization on the tax-free ongoing yearly support. But we have already obviously and identified by the organization, we've given a check of $125,000 to every individual in TVAC so that they can deal with any urgent needs immediately.
Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, the government's behaviour is simply inexcusable. 5 months after the House voted unanimously to provide thalidomide survivors with full support, the Conservatives have offered them nothing but half measures and broken promises. Survivors need financial certainty now. They deserve to know now that their needs will be met. But the government is flatly refusing to answer their questions, and there's no sign of the annual compensation the government promised. Why are the Conservatives failing to keep their promise? Will the minister announce today that she'll fully implement the program approved by all of us in the House?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we announced historic assistance to cover survivors' needs, and that includes up to $180 million that will be distributed throughout the survivor until every last living survivor is taken care of. We've already given each survivor $125,000 tax cash-free. They've received that payment already to get them through the next year. We also have $168 million tax-free ongoing yearly support, and in addition, the Extraordinary Medical Assistance Fund. Right now, Health Canada is working out the particular issues around dealing with the third-party administrator and working out details of the yearly compensation.
The Honourable Member for New Westminster Coquitlam.
A lot of talk, but no action. The Vancouver oil spill was a wake-up call, and it's not just Canadians who are ringing the alarm bell. Newly released documents show that U.S. officials are worried. A briefing note for Washington State's governor said Canada's oil spill response is probably a couple of decades behind the system in place in Washington State, and that our weaker standards could cost Washington alone billions of dollars in harm. Will the Conservatives stop making excuses and start protecting our coasts?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the honourable member knows, we are pursuing the most ambitious trade agenda that Canada has ever seen. But we're also taking it very seriously that in order to deliver our goods to the world, we have to make sure that we're ready for the increase in traffic. And that's why we've embarked upon a world-class tanker safety system. We have made significant investments. We have worked with many partners in British Columbia to deliver on these promises. These are actions, Mr. Speaker. These are real. And that's very contrary to what that party does over there, making empty promises they can never deliver on.
The Honourable Member for
Solano Coast Guard Station. What is the minister talking about when she tells us that they made investments? They say that we've got a world-class oil spill response system. They forgot to give us the year, 1970. Let's try to get something that corresponds to 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the animation from the opposite side of the House. However, the reality is this, Mr. Speaker, we have increased Coast Guard funding by 27%. That's this government. I can also indicate that we are ensuring that there is enough money to pay in a polluter pay principle to ensure that spills can be dealt with in an effective manner. Mr. Speaker, we have expanded the National Aerial Surveillance Program by 55% to ensure that we have a watchful eye on tankers moving through Canadian waters. We're adopting area response plans. These are real things, Mr. Speaker, not the fantasies of the NDP.
The honourable member for St. Paul's.
Mr. Speaker, today the Auditor General outlined this government's total failure to provide access to quality health care for First Nations. According to the Auditor General, nursing stations are in First Nations communities are in poor repair, chronically understaffed, and the healthcare workers lack the very training mandated by Health Canada to work in these communities. The government has known many of these issues since 2010 and done nothing. Why?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I had a chance to meet with the Auditor General to assure him that we are working on every single issue that he's raised in this report. And our number one priority is to make sure Aboriginal people on First Nations have access to healthcare providers. And that's where our nurses come in. Nurses on First Nations are all highly educated and qualified individuals and a big part of the community. And we are working to make sure that they are all trained with their additional credentials that they may need to work out of scope in terms of their scope of practice. But in addition, Mr. Speaker, we need to encourage more people to come to work on First Nations. So we have our Canada Student Loan Forgiveness, and we have a new nurse recruitment strategy.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Labrador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Auditor General today revealed that the Conservatives are releasing hundreds of inmates from prisons directly into the community before rehabilitation and safe integration programs are even completed. The AG said that 1,500 offenders were released directly into the community from medium and maximum security prisons last year without the full benefit of a gradual reentry program into society or proper supervision. So I ask the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, why are they gutting programs that ensure the safety of Canadian communities?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, this question is coming from a party who didn't want to cut the old age security for inmate, Mr. Speaker. Well, let me reassure the member, Mr. Speaker, we agree with the Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, that you do the crime, you do the time. I'm pleased that the Auditor General found that our truth in sentencing measures have worked because more prisoners are staying behind bars for a greater portion of their sentence, where they can have rehabilitation, Mr. Speaker, and where we can make sure that our community are safer, Mr. Speaker. We make sure that the Correctional Service has accepted the recommendation of the Auditor General and are working to address some issues raised by the Auditor General, but let's be sure we will keep our community safe first.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough-Rouge River.
Mr. Speaker, they've done it again. The Minister of the Canada Revenue Agency has managed to fail at one of the most basic functions of government. This time, CRA managed to create mass confusion about when the tax filing deadline actually is. And now, for the second year in a row, has been forced to extend the filing deadline. Will the Minister explain how this latest failure occurred and take some responsibility for the sorry state of affairs at the CRA?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue.
Mr. Speaker, due to a CRA error, an incorrect notification was sent around to tax preparers on Friday, indicating the CRA filing deadline is May 5th. Our government has made it clear providing this incorrect information was unacceptable, and therefore I have directed my officials to ensure no Canadians are penalized for the CRA's error. Canadians who file their taxes before May 5th will not face any penalties. Our government remains committed to ensuring a fair tax system for all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Canadians no longer know what to expect from CRA. CRA is so good at mix-ups, they deserve a prize. lost personal information, mail-outs of personal information to the wrong people, and now a press release creating mass confusion among taxpayers by inadvertently allowing extra time to file. My question is simple. Is there no limit to Conservative incompetence? The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, as I indicated, our priority is to ensure that Canadians are not negatively affected by the unacceptable, incorrect information sent out by the CRA. As such, I have directed my officials to ensure that Canadians will have until May 5th to file their taxes. This is what Canadians would expect. Our government will not tolerate Canadians paying a price for a CRA mistake. That is why these actions have been taken in the interests of fairness to all taxpayers.
Honourable member for Saskatoon-Humboldt.
Mr. Speaker, the loss of life that has occurred in Nepal and the surrounding region is devastating. This government has acted swiftly, deploying additional consular staff and pledging $5 million in humanitarian aid. Can the Minister of National Defence update this House on further resources deployed in response to this disaster?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
I thank the member for his question, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to indicate to the House that the Canadian Armed Forces dispatched on Sunday a C-17 Globemaster with some 40 personnel and an enormous amount of equipment, including an ambulance, rescue equipment, humanitarian supplies, tents, etc., to Kathmandu. We hope it will be arriving tomorrow, Canadian time. And earlier today, we dispatched a second Royal Canadian Air Force C-17 bound for Nepal. Both of these airplanes will be available to help bring Canadians out of Nepal back into New Delhi, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are acting, and I want to thank the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces.
Honourable member for Westmount-Ville-Marie.
Mr. Speaker, many Canadians are stuck in Nepal and are at some risk. Denis Prudhomme, a Canadian tourist in Kathmandu, said, quote, "The U.S. Embassy is doing an excellent job, but there's no news from our own beloved government. It's pretty pathetic compared to what other countries are doing to support their nationals in a disaster situation." The minister can say what he likes, but this government has been slow to react. Where's the plan to repatriate our citizens? The Honourable Minister.
Wrong and completely unfair with respect to the Canadian efforts in that part of the world. You just heard from my colleague, the Minister of National Defence. In addition to that, we're sending hundreds of emergency travel documents to assist Canadians that may need them. We have consular services established at the American Club in Kathmandu, and I'd encourage all Canadians and any Canadians and their families to contact the Emergency Watch and Response Centre for further information. They're doing an outstanding job. They should have the support of the Liberals.
The Honourable Member for Musquenejet-Témiscouat-Télébasque. Mr. Speaker, it's frankly alarming. A former maritime law expert said the U.S. Coast Guard would get an 8 or 9 out of 10, but Canada would only get a 1 or 2, well below the pass mark. It's particularly critical for my riding, where a crab fishing boat has caught fire off the shores of Rimouski. It took the Coast Guard over 3 hours to reach the stricken vessel from Tadoussac. Imagine if the Quebec City Search and Rescue Centre had been shut down like the Conservatives wanted to do. What's this government waiting for? When are they going to do something? The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've improved our ability to respond to these events, including new funding, new tools, and ensuring that companies responsible are the ones who pay. Mr. Speaker, under our government, investments in the Canadian Coast Guard have increased by 27%. And by the way, the opposition voted against this, Mr. Speaker. The situation the member speaks of in Quebec is currently under. The situation in Quebec is currently being monitored by the Coast Guard.
And the Honourable Member for Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, last week our Finance Minister tabled a balanced budget in his House. And now that we've balanced our budget, we're helping middle-class families balance theirs through new measures like the enhanced family tax cut, the home accessibility tax credit, and the universal child care benefit, which will benefit 100% of families with children. Could Would the Minister of State for Social Development please inform this House what she's hearing everyday Canadians say about our new measures to support them?
Good question.
Honourable Minister of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member from Winnipeg South Centre for that question. Mr. Speaker, recently I met with Emmanuel. Emmanuel prepares taxes for everyday Canadian families. He said the best thing about his job over the last few weeks is the look on the faces of middle-class Canadians when they see their tax return because of our family tax cut and our expanded benefits. Mr. Speaker, the difference between this government and the NDP and the Liberals is we believe this money belongs to Canadians. The Liberals and the NDP thinks that money belongs in government coffers and somehow it's our revenue. Well, no, Mr. Speaker, it's Canadians' money. We believe it should be in their pockets.
The honourable member for HoC. Mr. Speaker, despite this government's posturing on combating terrorism and the crumbs they've thrown our police forces, there's absolutely nothing in the budget for the prevention of violent extremism, for research, for de-radicalization in communities and penitentiaries. But the Kanishka project won't be renewed. While several other countries are rushing to invest in these things, Canada is still dragging its feet. Is the Public Safety Minister actually going to do something and develop a genuine policy to combat violent extremism? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. On the contrary, our government has been investing for a long time in prevention as part of our strategy to combat terrorism, but unfortunately the NDP opposed that. $300 million is not crumbs. I think that's a lot for our police forces, for our intelligence gatherers, and our border agents. I'd invite my colleague to look at what we're going to do to beef up security on the Hill and what we're doing with our program to prevent crime. Let's be serious, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to combating terrorism. We're doing a lot of things to protect Canadians. The honourable member for Saint-Léonard. Mr. Speaker, lately the price of oil has only been going down. Canada knows how important the oil industry is and the effect of the price on our finances. Each dollar less costs the government $150 million. In Budget 2015, the minister forecast that the price would go from $54 a barrel in 2015 to $78 in 2019. But in Budget 2014, there was no mention about the price dropping in 2015. How does the minister predict this increase when the global situation is still particularly unstable? Is it by manipulating these forecasts that the minister managed to balance the books?
For the question. The economic outlook in Budget 2015 is based on average of private sector forecasts, as has always been the case since the mid-1990s. This year was no different. Private sector economists agreed that this was a prudent basis for the economic forecast. Mr. Speaker, our balanced budget, low-tax plan will create jobs and economic growth for Canadians with measures like cutting the small business tax rate to 9%. We know that the opposition parties would take those away. Canadians understand they're better off with this Conservative.
That concludes question period for today. I would like to draw the attention of honourable members to the presence in the gallery of Reginald Dawes, member of the Air Force, who is receiving today the Royal Canadian Air Force Member of the Year Award. Orders of the day. Order du jour. Oh, point of order. The honourable member for Burnaby New Westminster has a point
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to follow up on the question from the member from Hamilton Mountain and from the comments that were made by the member from Rosemont-le-Petit-Patrie. As you know, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is responsible for the executive branch of government, and he alone is responsible for the quality of appointments, whether that's for the ministry or to parliamentary secretaries. And Canadians definitely deserve answers when the opposition asks the Prime Minister to account for the quality of those appointments. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say just very clearly, Canadians deserve answers. They're not getting them from this government. I would ask you certainly to consider and allow the questions.
Appreciate the member raising this point. As he knows, I've already ruled on the matter. The questions I heard them had nothing to do with the executive branch of government nor with the administration of government. It had to do with a now private individual, former member of the House, which he may be interested in, he may wish to ask questions, but those must be done outside of question period, which, as he well knows, is for the purpose of holding the government to account for actions of government departments, spending of government, and things like that. So I've given several rulings on this matter, including a very comprehensive ruling in, I think it was February of 2014. I can double check for him and happy to send it to him. But members are given a great deal of latitude to pose their questions, and I'm sure that he and his team will find ways to use their times for questions to hold the government to account for actions of the government, but not of other private citizens or things that fall outside the purview of government. Orders of the day, order du jour.
Government orders, consideration of Ways and Means motion number 18.